Hi, my name is Dano.
And I'm Wheezy.
And thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of
FPL Across the Pond.
Today we will be discussing some international break updates and diving into potential Game Week 4 wildcard drafts for those of you looking to revamp your squad, along with everything you need to know to maximize your points in the upcoming game week from across the pond. Let's go ahead and jump into our Game Week 3 results and thoughts here. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what happened over the international break, but just to recap for you guys, 4 out of the 10 games ended in a 1-1 draw. Those games were Arsenal versus Brighton, Nottingham Forest versus Wolves, Ipswich versus Fulham, and also Chelsea versus Crystal Palace. So we did have almost half of those games that just ended in draws, but still overall a pretty exciting week here. I think there's a lot of action that went on here in the Game Week 3. Wheezy, what do you got going on this week?
Yeah, when you get a bunch of 1-1 draws, it's a little disappointing, especially when you're banking on getting like the clean sheet bonus, right? And so with 4 of those 10 games being 1-1, you know, if you had some Arsenal defenders in there or Reyes, your keeper, you would have hoped to keep a clean sheet against Brighton, but Brighton continued to impress. But really the team of the season after 3 weeks has got to be Liverpool, right?
Agreed.
Luis Diaz, what has he got? 3 goals and an assist, I think, on the season at least. Jota, Salah. You know, they're a great team to play with on FIFA because they just have like so much attacking talent, right? So they're finally putting it all together. You know, during this honeymoon period with Arne Slot, they pretty much dominated Man United. It's just really weird what Man United's got going on this season as far as their Jekyll and Hyde performances.
Well said. Well said.
They played Man City tough in the Community Shield at the beginning of the season, and then they looked like they didn't belong in the same league as Liverpool this past weekend.
No, not at all. Agreed. And I like your FIFA reference. Liverpool's continued to impress. They've just been killing it, doing great. Definitely a standout team there. You know, in terms of those, those 1-1 draws, you know, with Arsenal versus Brighton, and that you made a good point with Brighton. Just I think they, even with that 1-1 draw away, you know, they got the point and they were able to come out of that, you know, positively, you know, coming back to Brighton here in the next couple game weeks where they have home fixtures. So yeah, definitely good on them. Another team that did dominate in the Game Week 3 was City. Definitely dominating 3-1. Second hat trick for Haaland there. He was definitely making some inroads in terms of his XG potential there and cruising right along at the top of the list. But definitely a second straight hat trick for Haaland. We really question must-have on the team, which we're going to get into this week here a little bit with some Game Week 4 wildcard drafts that you could use here moving forward if you do need to kind of change or make some changes or more than a few changes to your team here. And just so you know, I am activated my wild card this week, so I will be rolling with that here. So we can get into that in a little bit here. But yeah, definitely a dominant performance over West Ham, 3-1. Definitely can't complain. I mean, I think it was Duran that came in and got another goal. He's been a top performer on that team, and with the limited minutes that he's been getting coming in, so good on him. But yeah, just another showing for Haaland and Man City coming out on top there, which I thought it was going to be actually a lesser score line, but turned out to be exactly what everyone thought it would be, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm kicking myself for not putting in Haaland in my team last week. I should have just took the hit, but yeah, he's a must-have at this point. If you don't have him in your team, you're going to be left behind. I don't think there's any argument for keeping him out of your squad, even if he's 20 million pounds at this point. But I'm definitely bringing him into my team this week as well. Probably the most exciting game of the week was Bournemouth against Everton. Everton, looked to have turned around their season, right? Going up 2-0 against Bournemouth. And, we had talked about them last week about being kind of one of our disappointing teams, and no one really had them on our relegation radar. But, we look like we were overreacting, and then they gave up 3 goals in the last 10 minutes, right? And yeah, just a total collapse. So I don't know how they're going to bounce back from that. They have to be at the bottom of the table or near the bottom of the table at this point. So yeah, tough start of the season for Everton.
Yeah, how disappointing for those Evertonians, man. They're up 2-0 going into the 86th minute or something like that, and they ended up just dropping it. And they are at the bottom of the table, just to confirm. Bottom 3 are Wolves, Southampton, and Everton. Great for Bournemouth, horrible for those Everton fans. But
For sure.
yeah, that's quite disappointing. We do have the Brentford definitely got welcomed Aaron Ramsdale to Southampton with that 3-1 win at the G-Tech. 2 goals by Brian Mbomo and a 1 goal by Yohan Wissa, which is great. I actually brought him in as a transfer last week, so that was a big plug, as well as the Bournemouth game we were just talking about. I brought in Semenyo too, so both of my transfers ended up scoring goals last week, which really helped me with that when I didn't have Holland on my team for that captaincy pick. He definitely nailed it.
You did point out both Mbomo and Visa last week, so
yeah,
you would have done well to add them, and I definitely didn't listen to you, so I'm gonna definitely shake things up this week, though.
Let that be a lesson to you, Weez.
Yeah, for sure.
What else we got?
Looks like Eze's back in the Chelsea match. He had a spectacular goal and nearly a few more. Kind of another disappointing performance for Chelsea. That I had captain Cole Palmer last week, and did not pay off for me. What you would probably take out of that would be that Eze's back. He had that free kick taken away. We talked about 2 or week 1, one of the early weeks, and he's just always dangerous on the pitch. So he's a good player to own. Yeah, it looks like they'll probably stay clear of the relegation zone this year, I'd imagine. But yeah, Chelsea just continues to frustrate with their inconsistency.
Yeah, just a lackluster game all around, right? Palmer just couldn't, make anything happen in terms of respect with him, and you could tell by the end of that game he was getting frustrated too. It just wasn't happening for him. I think he got a yellow too, if I'm not mistaken. Eze, I think is. Man, I think that, like you said, he had the great free kick that got called back, and then, I think he's coming into form, you know what I mean? Like we were mentioning at the, the first few podcasts, definitely just don't drop players or don't look for players to, continue in the first 2 games, like performance, you know what I mean? You gotta think about that long term, but he's definitely coming into his own. He had a great goal, so. Okay, we got Newcastle. Just got a couple more games here. Newcastle did score 3 goals to beat Tottenham 2-1. How do you do that, they say? Burn had an own goal. That's about it. All Newcastle players got the 3 goals for them here. But Isak did seal that win in the 78th minute with an assist from Jacob Murphy, who I just got rid of. He would have got the assist, but hey, I got goals from my 2 players that I brought in as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think Tottenham had a few set pieces, that just weren't. They just couldn't connect. I mean, Pedro Porro specifically had one that was just, over the bar, and just, he just couldn't do it. He couldn't bring it down. But yeah, they definitely need to work on those set pieces for the upcoming game week, I would say.
Yeah, and I ended up taking Nick Pope out of my team last week, and I dropped him to the bench. I pulled in Flecken from Brentford. Who didn't get the clean sheet. They won that. They gave up a goal. Yeah, that's it. They gave up a goal in like the 96th minute. Just some consolation goal that didn't matter, except for it took away, 4 points. Yeah, and so yeah, that's too bad there. But yeah, Nick Pope had a bunch of saves to get some bonus points, and I think he ended up with 3 as just a 3-point week, which was better than both of my goalies that I had. Or I guess Flecken had 2 points this week. So yeah, I'm a little salty about making that move. But yeah, I also had Dan Burn in my team with the own goal. What does that count for? Is that a -2 or something? Yeah, and just confirming, own goal is -2, and red cards -3, and yellow cards are -1. So yeah, and then there was the Aston Villa versus Leicester game. It was 2-1 victory for Villa at home. Onana scores another goal. I said he didn't have any goals in him. and I was wrong. But I'm not overreacting by his start. I'm not going to bring him into my team. I saw he was in a couple of your drafts. Are you bringing him in this week?
As of right now, I am bringing him in. Yeah, I just think with those fixtures, and we'll get into that later, but yeah, with those fixtures they got in his form, I'm just hoping he continues it.
Yeah, and this was another late goal that ruined the clean sheet for some of my defenders that I had on my team. So that was...
You have Kansa, right?
Yeah, I had Kansa starting, and so, yeah, it was... I dropped something like 15 points or something in clean sheet bonuses over the last few minutes of those 9 a.m. games, 3 p.m. games in England.
All right, the next game we had was the Brighton versus Arsenal game. We already talked about this a bit. 1-1 draw. Brighton got that point away to Arsenal. Brighton moved to third, followed by Arsenal in fourth. I think that's the biggest takeaway from that game specifically, was because they're basically fighting for the same spot. And with that, 1 point was able to gain in that game. So they definitely upset Arsenal in that respect, pushing them to fourth. Let's see. It definitely was a great boost going into the international break for Brighton with that Game 4, Game 5 fixtures. They have very favorable fixtures in Game Week 4 versus Ipswich Town at home, and then also Game Week 5 versus Nottingham Forest at home. But yeah, Arsenal on the other hand saw Declan Rice booted from the game with 2 yellow cards. We're just kind of curious if Mikel Mourinho will step in and kind of get back to form, but he does have a 75% chance he's got of coming back here, so that's to be determined. We'll see about those press conferences before the game. And then one thing to note was Leandro Trossard, the player that I was highlighting last week that I thought wasn't going to get the time of day from Mikel Arteta, got the start and had a few great opportunities, had a couple shots on goal, unable to capitalize. But again, we have the Saka-Havertz connection that is becoming very effective in terms of Arsenal's weapons that they have there. So those two are just on the same page and they're connecting. So hopefully that'll continue forward.
Yeah, and last but not least, we had Nottingham Forest versus Wolverhampton. Some Wolves got a 1-1 draw out of it. Chris Wood got the goal for Forest. I had him in my lineup. I had highlighted him in the first episode. Basically, he had a good run of fixtures to start the season. So he's either got 2 or 3, I think 2 goals now on the season. So not bad for a £6 million-ish striker. So decent return from the early season from Chris Wood there. And definitely just a tough game at home for the Tricky Trees.
Low budget forwards that are coming through. Specifically, him and Danny Welbeck are just making inroads here at the beginning of the season. Will that last? Yeah, we'll see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, plus your guy João Pedro too. It's between those 3 guys. Couldn't do wrong with any of them in your squad at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but João in himself too. He's got a couple of goals, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's a couple of goals, and he's on penalties too. So you have that aspect to him as well to get you some extra points in your fixtures. Let's go ahead and move on to our deadline day transfers here. Who are the last minute transfers that will affect your EPL needle moving forward? All right, so we do have a few players that we're going to highlight here that are going to be impact players on the teams that they just transferred to, starting with Jadon Sancho. And most of these players didn't get the start for the first game week, still processing paperwork, what have you, whatnot. But Jadon Sancho did move from Man United to Chelsea. He was on loan to Dortmund last year, had a phenomenal Champions League final, as we've been talking about. I think we've highlighted that a couple of times here when we've talked to him, or the few times that we have talked about Jadon Sancho here. There are still some question marks on where that he'll actually fit into the team with that overloaded Chelsea squad, but fantastic player that will be a great addition to the team here moving forward, to be determined where that he's going to fit in.
Yeah, he never apologized to Eric Ten Hag after all, so I don't think he's getting back in the Man United squad as long as Ten Hag is there, but yeah, hopefully a change of scenery will bring the best out of him. Another interesting transfer was Federico Chiesa to Liverpool from Juventus for around £10 million with some add-ons, which is pretty interesting to see his market value just completely collapse, because he was always viewed as like a £100 million player, as recently as 2 seasons ago. He has had some injuries, so he hasn't been playing as often as you'd like, but he's the only signing of the transfer window for Liverpool, and we talked about their FIFA lineup already, Liverpool's, and so they got even more attacking talent, and if Arne Slot can get the best out of him, they're going to be very scary for the next handful of years here, because outside of Mo Salah, most of their talent is fairly young, and I guess Virgil van Dijk as well. He's kind of a question mark, but if they can get Kwanzaa or some of their younger players through the academy to continue to contribute, Arne Slot is set up for some success here in the coming years.
Yeah, I could not agree more. We got like 3 big contracts that are up this year with Salah, Virgil van Dijk, and then also Trent Alexander-Arnold, which, I mean, in terms of age, Trent Alexander-Arnold's got to be the one they're prioritizing just because he has so much potential. And, he's just one of the best players in the league to begin with. In the world, I'd say, at his position, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's definitely a player that I would think they'd want to focus on moving forward. You can't go wrong with Salah either, but
Right. Yeah, Salah still continues to impress, but yeah, Trent Alexander-Arnold, he just screams Real Madrid all over him. He seems like somebody who might go abroad to the biggest club in the world. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him leaving England for a new challenge, but where would he go? Man City? He's not going to go to Manchester United, like Chelsea. Like, what's a bigger club than Liverpool? Real Madrid. So that's the only club that I could see making sense for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that if he were to transfer in the end, it would be abroad. Big one was Raheem Sterling here. Definitely not a transfer that I like. I love Raheem Sterling. I think he's a great player. He's getting older, but he's not that old. He's like 27, 28. He's not that old. But he is moving to Arsenal. So, and again, that's another interesting pick, London rival, crosstown rival, I should say. But just going to be interesting to see where he fits into that team there. They have a squad on them, plus an incredible bench. So we'll see what happens with, Raheem Sterling moving forward. Definitely think that Sterling deserves more than what Maresca's been offering, which is essentially nothing. It was kind of like a mixed signals thing, really, with him. Like, he was playing in the preseason and that with him, and looked to be like Maresca would be moving forward with him, in the starting team, or at least on the bench for the starting team, but hasn't even done that. So, yeah, all the best of luck to him. Hopefully he can do some things at Arsenal, just hopefully not against Chelsea, but we'll see.
Yeah, luckily he, will have to sit those games out, but...
yes, good call.
Right, and so another Arsenal transfer was Eddie Nketiah finally got a move away, and there was another player from a big club, Trevoh Chalobah, who also moved to Crystal Palace with Nketiah, and so they were 2 kind of fringe English internationals that got moves from bigger clubs to a smaller club in Crystal Palace in search of more game time. And so, I think they'll get it in the squad at various points of the season, and could potentially factor into our fantasy squads, but not quite yet. We'll let them settle in first, but definitely a couple players to keep your eye on if they can nail down some starting spots in a pretty dangerous Crystal Palace team at times that we've seen since Oliver Glasner has taken over. So it's a couple exciting moves for Palace.
Yeah, definitely. Much needed, right? On both ends, offense and defense. So, definitely provide more depth for both ends of the field here. Next, we have Manuel Ugarte moving to Man U from Paris Saint-Germain, the Uruguayan international. Will definitely come to United's midfield at a crucial point where Man United's terrible showing against Liverpool last week at Old Trafford definitely caused some concern. Like you said before and previously in the podcast, just like up and down with them, right? It seems like they're on the right track from what I can see in terms of making the right, I don't know if I'd say the right moves, that's to be determined, but they are making some moves and they did some offloading in the summer transfer window, just lackluster players that were weighing them down. So I definitely think that it's definitely going to shore up that Man United midfield there. Possible downside is that he hasn't got a lot of playing time at PSG at all this season. So that was something that he was reflecting on himself in terms of minutes and match fitness. So I don't know if I expect him to just jump into the starting lineup, but yeah, give him a little bit here, maybe a few game weeks, and we'll see what happens with Ugarte.
Yeah, and another transfer was Aaron Ramsdale from Arsenal to Southampton. So he's going from the top of the table to the bottom of the table. So as a goalkeeper, that's definitely a different experience. So it's good to see him getting off the bench with David Raya just grabbing his starting spot last season. Ramsdale seems like a good guy, so I'm hoping he can put it back together. He originally burst onto the scene, I think, with Bournemouth in the relegation zone, just taking a ton of shots and making a bunch of saves. So, maybe he can keep them up in the Premier League this season, but I doubt I'm going to have him in my squad as long as Southampton continues to leak 3 goals a game like they have been recently.
Yeah, definitely, and they're among the worst in terms of stats and the goals allowed. So their goals allowed away is pretty bad, and they have actually the number 1 spot, Southampton, for goals allowed at home. So that definitely doesn't help their situation whatsoever. Ramsdale was the only player to start and play in the of the deadline day transfers or signings that was able to play in that initial game week there out of all these transfers. One more notable here, Andre to Wolves from Fluminense, a defensive midfielder, and they definitely need it. They're lacking since losing Pedro Porro up front and then Kilman in the back. They're looking to revamp that defensive mid position, that number 6 position there. So hopefully he can get in and get some playing time and help that team in their defensive woes. Okay, so just a couple international break updates here in terms of injuries and illness. We do have a couple notable players that might affect your FPL team, so just wanted to point those out really quickly here. Declan Rice is suspended until September 2nd with those 2 yellow cards. Hel Mourinho, who's a big player transfer that just came in here to Arsenal, also has an unknown return date. We also have Ollie Watkins that took a knock. He was out for the England squad. He does have a 75% chance of playing. Leon Bailey also has a 50% chance of playing with hamstring injury. So if you do have him on your team, definitely look to maybe bench him and or look to get him out this week moving forward. But they do have some upcoming fixtures that are really good. So you might want to hang on to him. He's a key player for them. But again, with that injury, who knows? We have Kamara that's out with a knee injury with 50% chance of playing here in the next game week. Ayer from Brentford has a 75% chance with the knock that he had. From Brighton, 2 notable players are Milner, who's been anchoring that midfield there for Brighton this season, has a 75% chance of playing, along with Mats Weifer, who has a 50% chance of playing. He has a little bit more intense injury. From Chelsea, just a couple notable players. Cole Palmer is out with a 75% chance of playing, and Malo Gusto with the same as well with an injury. And then moving on to Manchester City, we have Savinho with a 75% chance of playing, and Foden is still out sick here, so who knows when he's going to come back into their squad. We have Tottenham with Van de Ven. He has a 75% chance of playing in this upcoming game week. Richarlison is still out. He will be out with an unknown return date. And Solanke's a big one, big summer signing that they came up, that they added to their squad. He has a 50% chance of playing, so very unlikely this game week, but definitely some notable changes to your FPL squads if you have any of those players in your team. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our game week 4 squads.
Yeah, I decided to make some big moves this week. I just need to shake things up. I've been kind of falling behind with the fact that I didn't have Haaland in my squad, so I needed to make some big moves in order to accommodate him in my squad. So yeah, I brought in this week Haaland. I brought in Joachim Andersen from Fulham. I had to bring in a couple really low-price players just to fit Haaland in. So I got just the cheapest players possible. There's the cheapest midfielder is some Mateus Franca de Oliveira from Crystal Palace at 4.4 million pounds. So took advantage of that and brought him into my squad. And then I also brought in a 4.5 million pound striker who actually doesn't even play for Nottingham Forest. So I just clicked on him and he's transferred to the Turkish league. So I had brought in Wang Yujo from what I thought was Forest, but he must have moved since I brought him in. So I'm not really sure what'll happen with that, but there's other 4.5 million pound strikers that I can swap them out for, but I never intended for those two players to play on my squad. It's all about bringing in Holland. So I did have to drop a few players from my squad to accommodate them. And so I did have to drop Trent Alexander-Arnold, Chris Wood, and I believe Phil Foden and Vardiol from Man City. So it was four separate moves. I had 2 transfers in the bank, so I took an 8-point hit on this week to basically revamp my squad. So I will be starting Isak on the squad. That was one of the players who I considered potentially dumping to accommodate Holland, but with him away at Wolves, I wanted to keep him in the squad. And so Holland is in with the home game against Brentford. And so he's going to be my captain this week. Yeah, I actually, must have had to drop Muniz from my team Fulham. So yeah, I actually got to keep Vardiol in my back line because they're playing at home against Brentford. And he seems to be like one of the only Man City players that has kind of locked down a spot in Pep's lineup. So I want to keep him in my squad with that potential of a clean sheet this week against Brentford. And yeah, I got, sticking with Dan Burn against Wolves, and Nick Pope is going to be my goalie as well. A couple Fulham players with the home game against West Ham. Joachim Anderson. I'm not entirely sure he's going to get the start, but yeah, like we had talked about it last week, with him coming into the squad, you thought he might jump right in, but as I suspected, Marco Silva is going to require Issa Diop to do something bad to get dropped from the squad, so he might not play this week, so it might be a little bit of risk starting him in my lineup, but I'm just banking on the Holland effect overcoming any other weaknesses in my squad, and I just can't get left behind with his 30-point performances when you captain him. So yeah, that's where I'm at this week. I heard you are going to use your wild card. So
yeah,
what are your thoughts with that?
I did. I activated my wild card. It's the earliest I've ever activated it in an FPL season. So I'm just hoping it pays off. But like you mentioned, I didn't start with Holland on my team, so I was looking to readjust and add him. I actually ran a couple different wild cards, one with Holland on my team and one without Holland on my team. And I rated, without Holland, I rated a 93 from the Fantasy Football Hub AI rating. And with Holland, actually, I rated lower than that, an 88 and an 89, depending on like certain players that I bring in that. Yeah, so for whatever reason, that Holland wild card that I have is not working here, in terms of the AI rating, that is. But that
AI cannot comprehend Erling Haaland.
Yeah, exactly. He's making inroads. It's not even just he's having like a breakout season, even better than his opening season a couple years back with Man City. You know what I mean? His data is incredible.
Yeah, he's a beast. There's nothing like him in the world at this point, right? Like he's a pure goal scorer playing on one of the top 3 teams in the world, right? And so he's got a nice setup. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to continue to bag some goals. And it's like, he goes 3 games without scoring. People think he's like in like the worst slump of his life, right? And but what is it? 2 hat tricks in a row now.
2.
So yeah, I can't not have him. I tried to go the first 3 weeks without him, thinking I was gonna be some smart guy here, but I'm not going to be left behind by not having him in my squad.
Of those 2 wild card drafts that I did put together, I'm going to tell you about in a minute here. I mean, I'm favoring obviously the Holland wild card, just because that was my intention all along, to bring him in with that wild card. So what else is the point in doing that at this point myself, unless you're going to take like, an 8-point hit or whatever the case may be, like you did. But one way or another, you got to try to get him in, I would think. Okay, so just going into my wild card here, I got a couple different wild cards, obviously, but both of my wild cards do basically keep in the same back line. So I'll just start with the defense really quickly first here. I got Keane as a low budget that I brought in, and FaZe as well that I brought in at a low budget. Both are 4 million and 4.1. I did get rid of Gvardiol. You were just talking about keeping him, but he hasn't been performing, and pretty much my only move to get him in for the Holland, for the Holland wild card, that is, was to get rid of him, make some room up, free up some money in my defense there. But both of my wild cards, Keane, Robinson, FaZe, Alexander-Arnold, and Pedro Porro will be shoring up the defense for my wild card. Let's see here. The midfield is where midfield and forwards obviously are a little bit more where they're mixed. Goalkeepers here. For my Holland wild card that I do have, well, I'll just go through that first as well. I got Raya, and I'm considering possibly bringing in Pope, but I would have to make some moves in my midfield in order to free up a little bit extra funds for him. But I love the overlap with the goalkeepers between Raya and Pope, in terms of Raya doesn't have the greatest fixtures with Tottenham and Man City in game week 4 and 5. And then Pope has Wolves and Fulham, actually. I think it's your team, Wheezy. Fulham, game week 5. In the midfield, I'm continuing to keep Salah, obviously. I am bringing in Luis Diaz in the midfield as well, along with Onana, Mitoma, and I was considering Buenanote from Leicester, given his form and their fixtures coming up. So he's on the fringe, but I am kind of leaning towards Madueke, but that will determine, where the goalie option is. If I can free up some money with the goalie. The only other option I would have is Ramsdale, and I'm not too confident in that Southampton defense. So, there's that. I would have to sacrifice Madueke because I don't have the funds there. But in any case here, the only two players that are a change with my Holland wild card are going to be bringing in Eze, taking out Nkunku that I had previously. And I'm not even replacing Palmer. I had Palmer on my previous team, but he would replace Onana in the Holland wild card. Like I said, I was considering possibly bringing in Buenanote from Leicester City in the midfield, but yeah, I don't know. It's just Madueke is, with the fixtures that they have with Chelsea moving forward here, and his playing time being stamped on, I don't see a reason not to include Madueke in my squad. But again, it comes down to my goalie. I might have to free up some money. I did sub out a big transfer for me, which maybe some people might not be too keen on, is Onana for Rodgers. Rodgers just hasn't been producing. He's been in the mix of everything. He's been in starts, plenty of game time, but just hasn't been producing for me, so I kind of got to stare away from him. But I do want to keep someone from Aston Villa on my squad, obviously outside of maybe moving to Watkins in the forward position, just given the good fixtures that they do have. You got Everton at home for the next game. Game week 5 is Wolves, and then you have Ipswich away after that. United at home isn't the greatest fixture following the Ipswich fixture, but then following the United game there, they do have Fulham and then Bournemouth at home. So definitely some great Aston Villa fixtures, so I'm looking to include at least 1 or 2 Aston Villa assets in my team. Again, we've talked about Madueke. It kind of just comes down to whether I can fit him in my squad with the money, but I would like to bring him in, given his past 2 game performance. Didn't score in the last game, but he was a bit unlucky, I think. Looks to be nailed on. He did have some limited playing time for England in the international break here. He did play 24 minutes against Finland in that 2-0 victory. So yeah, he's not being exhausted in the international break here. So I'm assuming that he'll be good to go for Chelsea in the upcoming game week, given Maresca will not do too much rotation. Last midfielder I have bringing in for both of my wild cards, and I'm just kind of going over the Holland wild card really because that's kind of where I'm leaning, but Mitoma is going to be in for both of my wild cards with the excellent game week 4 and 5 fixtures. Ipswich Town and Nottingham Forest at home. Definitely great fixtures for them, especially for how informed they are in their performance there. All right, so my last 2 changes I do have for both of my wild cards for our forward position here. Holland being obviously one of them with the Holland wild card. And also I'm going to bring in Liam Delap get rid of Johan Wheezy, and that's just a budget pickup. He had a great game versus your team, Wheezy, Fulham, last in game week 3. Definitely an excellent former Man City player that I'm just looking to see if he can capitalize on those good fixtures that are coming up to week 10. I'm not necessarily looking to play him, but those automatic subs do come into position with the fixtures. So hopefully, if it does come down to that, he can give me some points there. But again, I'm not looking to play him that much. Definitely keeping João Pedro in the mix. He's my consistent in the forward position. Game week 4 and 5, like I mentioned with Brighton already, Ipswich Town and Nottingham Forest at home. Definitely great fixtures for a Brighton team that's doing really well, not only at home but away. 2 forward changes that I did make in terms of my wild card that did not have a Haaland in it. In terms of the forwards, we're just going to bring Ollie Watkins again, like I already mentioned, for that forward position in terms of those fixtures that they have going forward. He hasn't been in the best form lately, hasn't been doing that great, but he did sit out in the international break there. He didn't get called up to the English squad due to the injury. So he's going to be rested. We'll see if he gets to start in the next game week. Again, I'm not leaning towards the squad without Haaland, so it's not too big of a concern for me. But if you were looking to pick up a forward that has great fixtures coming up here, definitely Ollie Watkins would be someone to look at. Calvert-Lewin, it was my other asset that I pulled in here for that game week 3 versus Bournemouth. Definitely, he did get rested for the international break. He wasn't called up for the England squad, and Everton, as bad as they are, I'm just hoping that maybe Calvert-Lewin would still be getting returns. So they do have great fixtures up until game week 14. So hopefully, if you do add him in your squad, or if I ended up choosing that other wild card that I had in place, he would definitely be on my team, or a big consideration. But overall, just in terms of my wild card, I wanted to triple up on the Liverpool players. I got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Salah, and Luis Diaz coming in here, and that's the reason why I kind of backed off Becker. But they have great fixtures coming up, and the form, like we already talked about, I need to be repetitive. They're just in incredible form and just playing magnificent football right now. So we'll see if that can continue. One thing I did want to highlight was Salah's expected goal percentage, which is 97% per 90 minutes, which is just incredible. I think it's just right under Haaland right there in terms of respect. Luis Diaz as well, who I also brought in there in the midfield, has a 0.53 percentage for 90 minutes of game time for that expected goal. So looking at the data, I think he's going to continue this form, or both of them, I should say, as well as hopefully get some more points across the board with Trent Alexander-Arnold. But yeah, that's it for my game week wild cards and different teams there.
How many weeks do you think you planned out for with this wild card? Do you feel pretty secure the next 3 weeks? Do you know that you're going to have to make a move in week 7 with some tough fixtures, or like how far forward are you looking?
So I'm planning out a little bit further because I'm playing the wild card so early. I'm planning about 7 or 8 weeks out. That's not to say I'm not going to make transfers, obviously, in that time frame, given especially with the 5 transfer carryover. I was setting myself up looking at for the next 7 or 8 week fixtures, just because I've never played the wild card this early. I don't exactly know how things are going to shift, so I was trying to play as far out as possible. But again, we'll see how that plays out.
So if all goes well, potentially you could have 5 transfers to shake things up again in week 9 or
yeah. So you can make as many transfers as you want during the wild card week. So like I've already made a bunch. I've been moving players in and out the whole time. But yeah, up until the game week deadline, you're able to make as many transfers as you want.
Yeah, and as much as it kills me to take the 8-point hit this week, I just couldn't part with my wild card quite yet. Ideally, I can bank some transfers over the next handful of game weeks and then kind of make a move to change up my squad. I do have 2 filler players at this point that aren't. One's not even in the Premier League, right? So it's just like I'm gonna have to get rid of them at some point. Bring Haaland in. You need to make some drastic moves to free up that capital to afford him, and I'm hoping it'll pay dividends having him in the lineup here. But good luck on that wild card. And
thank you. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I will still be able to blow it up a couple more times this season still. So my team starts to fall off the rails in the next couple weeks. You will definitely see me use the wild card to freshen up the squad a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll do some more wild card drafts in that as well, over the coming weeks here when people are going to start really amping up to use their wild card chips. So just because I'm playing mine doesn't mean we're going to stop discussing wild card, options here. So definitely move forward with those drafts. One and done. I like that. Hopefully.
That was nice.
All right, cool.
All right, well, I think we're good. Let's go ahead and wrap this up.
And thank you guys for tuning in to our podcast.
FPL across the pond.
Want some beer?